This is A World on Purpose.
A purposeful life is the most important kind and the most valuable kind of life.
Every choice that we make makes a difference, for better or worse.
I loved walking in a village and seeing the before and after.
This is the podcast dedicated to those humans choosing to live larger by working for the greater good. And these are their stories. Stories of hope and of true change that come from living on purpose.
What if you were to suddenly say there are no challenges, there are only opportunities?
Regardless of where you come from, your financial identity should determine where you end up in life.
I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and my hope is that my inspiring guests will take you on an introspective journey that helps you tap into your own pivot to purpose, bringing greater meaning to your life. Welcome to A World on Purpose. Everyone's pivot to purpose story is uniquely theirs, and Kate Williams, CEO of 1% for the Planet story, is certainly no exception. Tune in here as she reveals how a mountaintop outdoor adventure gone awry not only ended with victory, but brought her that aha moment of clarity, leading to her own pivot to purpose.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to A World on Purpose. Thank you for coming back. I am your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and I am so thrilled today to be here with one of my favorite people who is like a hero to me, carrying out some pretty incredible stuff from an organization that I have been passionately connected to for 15 years plus. Super, super excited to introduce to you my guest today, Kate Williams, who is the CEO of an organization many of you may have heard of called 1% for the Planet. And if you haven't, you're going to learn all about it today. So Kate, thank you so much for tuning in with me and being my guest. And can you tell everybody where you're broadcasting from today?
Sure, and thank you so much. You are one of my heroes as well. But I'm broadcasting to you live from Vermont, where I live at the dead end of a dirt road, and where it's gray and somewhat chilly today.
That's as the contrast here. I'm sitting in Los Angeles, and it's more like 80 degrees. So I should be wearing my Patagonia pullover, but instead you are doing that for us, which is a perfect fit for what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's psyched to have this conversation. And I'm so grateful to you for being such a longtime member. You are one of the trailblazers, so you're an inspiration.
Oh, thank you. I'm really excited to dive into some of that too. So we're going to talk about 1% for the Planet as an organization. Its inception, obviously I'm connected to that. And, your segue coming in and being able to help lift it to the next level, which has been so incredible. But before we do that, I really, really love to dive into what I call my Impact Hero's origin story and sort of that aha moment when you realized your life was about purpose. And I know you have a pretty awesome story about that. So I was really hoping we could learn more about you first. Who is Kate Williams? What was that moment like for you? And then that kind of led you to where you are today. Can you share that with us? It would be fantastic.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I do feel grateful that I was fortunate to have an actual aha moment that I can point back to. I feel like in, many aspects of life, you don't get that sort of clear moment, but I did and knew it at the time. And it really has sort of been pivotal for me. So when I was 18, I was fortunate to spend a month in the mountains in Wyoming on a backpacking trip. And we were way out in the backcountry, and we had some challenges. It was snowier that year than it normally was, which meant it was really snowy. And this was in the summer. And so we were hiking on snow. We just encountered various different challenges, which, all were kind of character building and in their own way. But then the big challenge happened when one of our leaders, this was a group that I was with, one of our leaders broke his leg and we had to evacuate him. And this was, pre-cell phones. And so we had to orchestrate a rescue involving a runner team going out close to 30 miles and the rest of us moving an instructor. And if anyone hasn't ever carried a person over a trail, let me tell you that is not easy to do. It's slow going. And so just, lots of group and personal and environmental challenges were part of the experience. And we did it. And in the process, I had the opportunity to really have to step up and take some responsibility. And at one point kind of lead a section of the group because all the other instructors needed to be off doing things. And finally, at the end of, I think, day 3 after the injury, we stood on this pass, this snowy pass, and watched the helicopter lift off with this instructor, taking him to safety. And it was a gorgeous late afternoon. The sun was setting, and I was standing there in the snow. And I have to say, I was like in many ways miserable. Like I was really tired. We'd barely slept. My feet were really wet because we'd been wearing our boots in the snow. I was hungry because we had had to miss our food re-ration. And I was like, this is it.
Wow.
I love this. And loved, of course, was not that the instructor had hurt himself, but more just that feeling that I was in this absolutely beautiful place, and that in that beautiful place had been called on to like be my best self. Like there was no option but to show up for everyone else who was there. There was no option but to do the best that I possibly could beyond what I thought I could, because it was physically challenging to help this instructor, and in the process to just be fully experiencing this just powerfully beautiful wild place. So my aha moment was having this realization, not only that I loved that, but that this was what I wanted to devote my life to. And I think this was like the whole package of the group experience, the wild experience. And I didn't know exactly what I meant in having that thought in my head, but truly like figuring that out has sort of been the through line for my career. So I did from that point, move on to become an outdoor educator and then to work in the environmental space. And ultimately that path has led me to where I am.
I love that story so much. I think it's so incredible that you could actually have that kind of a pivot so early in life at 18. It takes years sometimes and multiple careers for people to have that hit them. And I love it because, Harvard Business Review did an article many years ago around purpose in the workplace and for people. And oftentimes they found that like 20% of people don't actually know what their purpose is. They know what their company mission is, but they don't know what their purpose is. And so as you had found that so early, I'd love to know how that shaped the way, some of the things you did in your career and how that particular moment so early on impacted the way you made those decisions of where you were going to work and how you were going to live and how you were going to show up in the world. Can you talk a little bit about that too?
Yeah, of course. And I think that's a great question because, I think it's important to make clear that, just because I had that aha and that sense of like, this is what I want to do, it doesn't mean that then everything just rolls out for you like a red carpet. There's still hard decisions and moments of uncertainty. But to your question, I think, having this sense of like what I really believe in, which is my connection to outdoor places, the power of connecting other people to outdoor places, that really has always been the thing that kind of pulled me through decision points. So initially, as I was sort of wrestling with, well, like, what does it mean to actually bring this to life? I was sort of on this, like, is it that I need to connect other people to these experiences? So, be in the outdoors leading, other people, or is it that I should really be advocating for wild places and protecting those places so that we can have those to support a healthy planet moving forward? And, that was like the little teeter-totter that I was trying to figure out. And initially I decided like, I really want to give people the chance to fall in love with the outdoors. So for about 10 years, I was an outdoor educator and totally loved it. I mean, in many ways, I still feel like that was like the best of the best. I was out in the field like 80 to 100 days a year, sleeping under the stars, and just the way that you connect with people and places when you get to, live in that way was really, really great. But then I did hit a point. I was married and, realized like I might want to actually like have a little bit more of a home base. And I was kind of getting the itch, like, I don't want to just take it for granted that these places are here for us to connect with. Like, what do I need to do to actually use what I've learned to protect these places? So right around when I was 30, I went back to graduate school and then sort of pivoted to working more in the space of, conservation and different efforts to be more on the advocacy side for outdoor places. And I continue to always be interested in the part that had to do with how people connect to those places, because I do just so believe that we fight for what we have a relationship with and we fight for what we love. So for me, it wasn't, even though I love those big wild mountains, it wasn't about, just sort of preserving those and keeping people out. It was more figuring out how do we get more people connected to and engaged with, and again, like falling in love with those places, so that they will then fight for them from wherever they are. And maybe it's just a backyard or a corner lot that they're fighting for.
Right. Well, I mean, that's perfect to have all that background and to be able to segue that into literally running like probably the world's biggest organization that's trying to preserve, protect, and integrate our hearts and our souls into the planet and how we're going to take care of it, not just now, but for all the future generations. So that's a perfect segue for us to kind of go into how you came about becoming a CEO of 1% for the Planet, and what that was like for you transitioning into an organization that was already established. If you could give us a little bit about the history of it first, which I happen to know, but most people don't, and what that was like for you coming into an organization that was created by this amazing visionary, started, and then you came in and sort of, as I said, take it to the next level, which has been really impressive.
Well, thank you. And yeah, 1% for the Planet, it really has been a gift to be able to serve in this role at such a great organization. So 1% for the Planet was founded in 2002 by Yvon Chouinard, who is the founder of Patagonia, and his good friend Craig Matthews, who is the founder of a company called Blue Ribbon Flies. And the story goes that they were fishing on the Madison River and realized that the ability to have that experience and to use the fly rods and wear the fleece and essentially, be doing what their companies support people doing, depended on that riverbank being accessible, and depended on it not being developed, and depended on there being a clean stream in which those fish could live. And so they had, this realization that it was really important that business give back, because it's, the way they saw it, it's the right thing to do for the planet, but it's also the only way that business is going to be sustained for the long term, is if there's a planet that can support an economy. So they created 1% for the Planet as kind of the movement builder for that concept. And from 2002, the work has been to grow that movement, to build the community of business members, and more recently individual members as well, who can commit their 1% to give back to environmental nonprofits who are protecting streams in Montana, but also now, we are all over the world. So, we have nonprofits in Europe who are working on plastics and pollution and issues like that. And so we really sort of have a diverse network across all sectors of business and across all issue areas of nonprofits that together are working to really look out for the planet. And our goal is to, engage this community to create a future where both the planet and future generations can thrive. And we really are excited to see the way in which, it's beyond just those who have a connection to the outdoors or to big mountains. It's about, wherever you live, if you're in a very urban area, if you don't have access to open spaces, the environment is still a big part of your health, your experience. And so, there's so many different ways that we can, use our love for a healthy planet to drive change. And that's what the 1% for the Planet Network is doing. And I am fortunate to, thank you. Yeah. And I'll just say quickly, so I'm fortunate to have come to it from, as I had said earlier, working on environmental issues, either at the conservation level or at the recreation level. I also, ran a nonprofit that was focused on a long distance paddling trail. Mm-hmm. And through all of that, and a thread that was really interesting to me was leadership. And I mentioned, my interest in how people connect to the outdoors, but I also have been very interested in how do people come together to make change? Like, what makes someone change? And because to work on behalf of the environment, you really have to think about that. Like, we've acted in certain ways, and we need to change our actions. And what is it that makes people change? And can you actually make someone change, or is it that you invite them into a new reality? And so that's been like a curiosity of mine, and certainly led me to explore more just the act of being a leader. So in an organization, how do you bring people forward? So, all of that was like percolating in me and evolving in my own career. And then just as is the case in so much of life, I think it was both like the preparation of having had these thoughts and developments in my own professional career, but then also the serendipity of having conversations that led me to 1% for the planet at a time when I was sort of ready for a change, and when they were, looking to, engage some new people. And I actually moved into 1% for the planet in a different role. And then after a year, moved into the CEO role, and just, have felt like incredibly grateful for that opportunity to, as you mentioned, to kind of take something that really had some great momentum, but also had an opportunity to get to the next level and to really figure out how do we build on the platform that we've got, but also do some things differently and take some steps forward. And so it's been great and fun and hard work ever since.
I know. And it's a lot of work. It's a huge undertaking. It's grown so much as well, right? I just wanted to touch on how 1% works, because and talk a little bit about leadership and the ideas about you are a leader, but you get to work among all these amazing other thought leaders that are, really on the same train as you. And to start that, 1% originally, if we should explain to the audience, was the inception of it. And I know this because of my own family involvement, was 1% of your entire gross revenue, right? That you're going to be giving back to the planet. And so in 2002, I was really blessed. I had happened to meet Yvon and his wife many years earlier in 95, my late husband, who unfortunately passed away from cancer. He and I were outdoor recreators, and his family had the largest organic vineyard at the time in the state of California in Napa Valley. And his in-laws were part of that, and they had their own winery. And so after he had passed and Yvon started 1%, he's like, hey, he contacted me with his people, and he's like, I'm starting this idea. Can you bring some really great brands? I think we'd like to try to get some people rallied. And I brought my mother and father-in-law, who I'm still extremely close to this day. You've been blessed to meet my mother-in-law, who's amazing. And it was really interesting standing in the middle of the flagship store in San Francisco with Yvon and talking about what this means. What is this undertaking? And I believe for my in-laws and for myself, it was like a no-brainer. It was like, why wouldn't we do this? Now that's a big undertaking, 1% of your entire gross revenue. And they've been doing that consistently, right? Every year for the past, since it started, since 2002. But how has that changed now for other leaders that want to get involved? Because some people, as you mentioned, individuals or emerging brands or people that really want to take on that ethos, it might be difficult for them to do 1% of their gross. So could you explain a little bit about how that shifted over the years and how your leadership kind of helped open that up to people a little bit more so they could really be part of it without that such a huge chunk?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so great. I feel like this is like a wonderful bookend conversation. Like you were there at the start and now we're here today kind of leading it forward. So it's so fun. And I would say, it's the majority of our companies, even, the newer companies who have joined, we're now at more than 3,000 member businesses globally. The majority of those are still at that total company level, 1% of total sales. So what's remarkable is that the growth is largely on the shoulders of people continuing to make that huge commitment, which is so awesome. And we see companies who are doing it, for heart and passion reasons. And we also see companies that are saying, yeah, and it's good for business. And that's a great thing, just to see the ways in which that the clarity around that opportunity has emerged. In terms of some of the flexibility that we've added, we've done a couple of things. One, recognizing that sometimes to, run a marathon right off the couch isn't always what you can do. You might need to do a 5K and then a 10K, just to use a running metaphor. And so we thought all right, so what's a way that we could get people on track to do the marathon of, being a whole company member, but provide some sort of training along the way. So we've created some opportunities for people, companies to join at what we call the product line level or the brand level. So if there's a discrete chunk of your business that could become a member, and you have to meet certain thresholds and whatnot. And it's always, the credibility is always there. You're always certifying 1% of whatever portion of your business that you do. So we have created that pathway, and we do have some companies that have, become members in that way. And that's really powerful. And it's a great opportunity because for us, we're always testing it against our mission. And our mission is to drive change through accelerating smart environmental giving. And to do that so that our planet and future generations thrive. And so we feel like yeah, sometimes we have to turn companies away if they can't make any sort of a commitment. But if someone wants to, take some initial steps by being a product line or a brand level member, and ideally they become a whole company member down the road, that's still adding to our mission and they're still part of the community. And what's really amazing, what we do see is that a lot of times we start the conversation with like, okay, let's start at this level. But the more they talk to other members, the more they talk to our staff, they often find like, nope, by the time we sign up, we're actually going to be whole company members. So it's pretty amazing to see that. And then one other thing that we've done is like within the 1% of your giving, we've also created the opportunity for you to do part of that in the form of volunteer or in-kind support, which is also very meaningful to nonprofits. And then additionally, the ability to do some of that in the form of advertising, to sort of tell the story of the nonprofits. Because a lot of nonprofits, really are doing amazing work, but no one knows about it and don't have budget to do that. So getting the word out is actually incredibly valuable. So, we've created some ways that there's still a strong financial component, which is, where the for real support for those nonprofits comes in, but it's also very for real to get in kind or advertising support.
Right. I think it's so important that you guys expanded it to that too, because those things do really make an impact and a difference. And I want to go into, in the next segment, we're doing this in a 3-part segment. So we get to hear from you 3 times in 1 week, which is going to be fantastic. In the next segment, I want to kind of dive into sort of the nitty gritty of what does it look like for a brand to be doing that kind of stuff from the brand side? What are they engaged in? We're going to talk about some of the actual impact, boots on the ground work, some of the real tangible difference that some of these organizations have been able to make because of the 1% pledges. And also the impact that it makes on consumers, which I'll wrap that by saying, my mother and father-in-law, owners of Paradigm Winery, I'm going to do a shameless plug there if I can, because they really were one of the pioneers to kind of start that, one of the first 10 brands. And when they had been a 1% member for several years, it was so far reaching that they actually had a couple come visit them, specifically picked them in Napa Valley to go to from Russia because they saw that 1% logo and they knew it was a trusted brand that was stepping up and really behind the mission of 1% and taking care of the environment, both in their own good practices already for their farmers and what they do with their crew and everything, but also because of the pledge. So I want to dive into that a little bit in part 2 and kind of give people a really good bird's eye view. But before we do that, we're going to wrap this segment, and I want people to know where they can find you, Kate Williams, in case they aren't able to tune into the rest.
Absolutely. So I encourage people to check out 1%fortheplanet.org, and that's all spelled out. So ONE%fortheplanet.org, and lots of great information there, including our podcast and, just other ways that people can learn about joining and can read some of our blog stories.
Great. And we're going to talk about your podcast in the next segment too, because I want everyone to know about that. You have so many great brands that you guys are talking to that are part of the network. So, and thank you everyone for tuning in to part 1 of Kate Williams and 1% for the Planet on A World on Purpose. I'm Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and come back. Be sure to come back. This is a very compelling story for part 2 and 3. You do not want to miss it. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A World on Purpose. I am your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and I am so excited to be going into part 2 of a 3-part series around my guest today, who is Kate Williams, CEO of 1% for the Planet organization. In the earlier segment on part 1, we dove into her amazing purpose origin story and her background and a little bit of a history of 1% for the Planet and how it works. And so now we're going to sort of dive deeper into the actual boots on the ground work that 1% has been able to accomplish. And we're also going to touch on what it means for a brand to get involved and why consumers actually are seeking out the 1% for the Planet logo when they're making their buying decisions. So, Kate, let's start with what does it take? You already kind of talked about what it takes for a brand to get involved, but when a brand actually gives this pledge, how does it touch the lives of the NGO, and what kinds of impact have those NGOs actually been able to make on the planet to date?
Yeah, it's a great question, because that's the heart of the matter, right? Is the support for those nonprofits who are driving the impact. So the way it works is we don't operate like a foundation. So the money doesn't pass through us. When a member makes their 1% commitment, we work closely with that member to help them to identify, what's their giving strategy? How do they want to develop the partnerships that will drive the impact that they're interested in? How do they want that to be part of their brand story? We really come at it from all angles. And then based on what we learn from our businesses, we say, all right, we know our nonprofit network really well. So here's a few suggestions. And we kind of put together a customized giving strategy. And then the company makes their decisions on how they want to move forward. And then once they're committed, they say, all right, I'm going to give directly to, say these 2 nonprofits. And then they're giving directly. So what's really great about that is they actually develop that direct relationship. And so they're able to, have connections with the stories of what are happening. They can show up and volunteer. There's all sorts of things that happen once you have those direct relationships. And then, as a result of that, if you sort of imagine what I've shared an example of like how it works with one company, we now have more than 3,000 companies. So multiply what I've just described by more than 3,000 and spread it out all over the globe. And the impact that we're seeing is really quite significant. So to date, the 1% for the Planet Network has given more than $250 million to environmental nonprofits globally. Last year, we certified more than 25 million. So we're really seeing a big acceleration in giving. And the way that plays out on the ground, which again is the heart of the matter, that's why it all matters so much, is that we've kind of grouped our nonprofits into 6 key issue areas. So climate, food, which is like regenerative agriculture and those kinds of things, land, water, ocean and fresh water, pollution, and wildlife. And so, obviously each of those has many different like subcategories, but those are the big groupings. And we're seeing, just amazing things happening in each of those. So, we have a company that's about to announce the 1,000,000th tree that their 1% giving has supported getting planted.
That's great.
Yeah. And and again, that's like one company. And so then you imagine like times 3,000. We have, companies who have been doing like active beach cleanups, both supporting nonprofits that do that, but then also engaging their employees. And they're able to, either show pictures of the like mounds of trash that they pick up and remove from these ocean environments, or to like be able to provide like tons, the role that they've played in like eliminating tons from the waste stream. And I mean, it goes on. And one of our biggest challenges is how do we talk about our impact? Because it's all taking place in these very specific ways. And, our focus is on the giving. So we often capture it in that higher level of like we're giving this much, but we always connect it to the stories, because those stories of the giving capture the data and impact, but also just the spirit of what's happening on the ground and the level of engagement, all of which are a really important part of the impact story.
I'm so glad you brought up storytelling, because in particular, the 1% network of brands and NGOs is such a unique network to some degree. And I'd like to talk about that for a second, because do you find that when a brand is looking to get engaged with 1%, that they're not, when people talk about giving back, a lot of times it's about the ROI. How is this going to increase revenue in our company as a business, et cetera, which are very important metrics. I mean, obviously you have to have that. But do you find that a brand, when they want to get involved with this network, is a little less ROI driven and more about the story and the impact that they're actually going to make? Or how does that balance out for a brand? Is it different for every brand?
Yeah, I would say it varies, but what's a really cool thing is that increasingly we see it as like those are intimately connected, because, consumers respond really positively to those stories. So a company that, joins for like pure heart and passion and tells a great story about their giving, that's good for their business. Like they see good returns on that. So whether or not that's their stated goal, those almost always go together. And that's been a really powerful part of our growth is, at the same time that 1% for the Planet has been, making its path forward, and particularly in the last few years, the consumer data around what people are looking for, and, from, like millennials, something like 90% would choose a product with a purpose over just brand X, would choose to pay more for a product like that. There are stories of, when a brand like steps out and takes a risk even on sort of making a statement, whether it's about a social or environmental issue, they'll see an uptick in sales as a result of that. So you can come at it from a bunch of different ways, but the data is very clear that consumers are super interested in this. So then again, back to the storytelling, the power of like communicating that message, and in the case of 1% for the Planet, of communicating that message with the credibility of the 1% logo, really does, end up being good for the environment and good for business.
Right. Yeah. Patagonia obviously is like the poster child for that, right? I mean, they certainly have done a lot of unique things around, don't buy this jacket, or various things where they know that on some intuitive level, obviously it's going to impact the ROI, but they're doing it for the reason, for the purpose, and people just want to support a brand that's doing that. So they're a perfect example. Obviously, are the founders of 1% for the Planet, or Yvon Chouinard and Patagonia. When you talked about helping guide a brand towards sort of their pathway through supporting the NGOs, if a brand doesn't have an NGO that they're already supporting, number one, you could kind of help align them with organizations that are sort of around their same mission and vision, is my first question. And number two, if they already have their own brands, but their own NGOs that they support, but they're not part of the 1% umbrella, they can opt to have you guys review them and have them put under that umbrella, not only for their 1%, but also for other brands to potentially choose them to support too as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So one of our favorite pieces of work is when we get to sort of work with a company who either hasn't been doing any environmental giving, or has been doing some, but not very strategically, and really wants to kind of, increase their investment and the quality of their investment. So we absolutely can sort of work with companies to help them to figure out like what's the right set of partnerships or single partnership for them. So we love that. And then similarly to your second point, a lot of times companies will have some good relationships with nonprofits already, and we are always happy to sort of vet those and sort of see if they fit into our network. And the way we do that is that we have a process of just, making sure that they're a solid nonprofit with a clear environmental commitment driving impact.
Yeah. And it's nice too for the brand side, because obviously when you're a compassionate brand, you want to help everyone, but you can't. It's hard. So for the brands to be able to have sort of a steadfast, we support 1% for the Planet nonprofits as part of our ethos, is kind of nice for them, because if a brand does want to get involved with a non-NGO and they decide that they want to support that, then they can submit them for consideration, or they could just say, we love your mission and vision, but we just support these ones that we're currently supporting right now, which is kind of nice. Mm-hmm. So as far as 1% goes as an organization, because you obviously support all these brands supporting all these nonprofits, is there any particular initiative or things that you guys are doing as a 1% organization that you're shepherding at this time yourselves? Or is it really about lifting just all of these NGOs and supporting the brands in the process?
Yeah, we tend not to sort of, pick one issue and kind of do, promote that. But what we really try to do is create ways that we can help grow the brand. Because we've realized the best way we can support all of our members and all of the initiatives that they're supporting is to grow the brand, grow the credibility of the brand, grow the awareness of the brand, so that then more consumers are like, hey, product A is a 1% for the Planet member, product B is not. Of course I should get product A because I believe in what they stand for, and I know that it means that this company is making a for real commitment. So boom, that's what I'm getting. And then that drives more giving. Like, that's the beautiful part of the model, is that consumers can participate through their purchases. That said, we often will have, say a company that's doing, a nonprofit that's doing some big drive to engage people around, the election is coming up. So there's a lot of different things there. And we'll certainly push those out through our channels, but we see our role as not becoming or pretending to become the specialist on any one issue area, but rather to really grow this larger community of experts in all issue areas so that we can sort of get people focused in the ways that are most meaningful for them.
That's fantastic. I'm very excited you guys are doing a few things that are kind of unique to help support that. One is, we'll talk about the podcast in a second, Planet Service Announcement. I love that name. But one of the things that I think is so powerful about the 1% Network for the brands and for the NGOs is that you've really created this amazing ecosystem, not just to lift the NGOs, but they all are interconnected and support each other. So when it comes to an event that they're hosting for one of their nonprofits, or they're doing something like we were going to have, the Global Summit, which I want to talk about how you're pivoting to sort of doing virtual things for a while in the next segment. Explain that a little bit about how the network is so powerful and how they've all lifted each other, because I just think that's such a unique value proposition to 1% for the Planet being a partner.
Totally. And I will say that's the thing that really, gets me excited. Because as I was saying earlier, thinking about how do people change? How do people move to different places? How are we part of change efforts? That to me is really fascinating. And what we're seeing with 1% for the Planet is one of the really powerful ways is you just create opportunities for people with purpose to get together, and then you let it take off. Yeah. And it's really amazing to see. So, I've described our model, and what we focus on is certifying that 1% of sales giving, which is no small thing. And it drives, big change. But what's amazing is that beyond that, our members and nonprofits are connecting with each other organically through events, online, all sorts of different ways. And they're going above and beyond based on, how they're inspiring and learning from each other. So we have companies that, came in to do their 1% giving, and, 3 or 4 years later, they've changed their whole supply chain, and they've started some, partnerships with other companies and promotions. And, there's stuff that I'm sure I don't even know about that's amazing that's happening, because that's the best thing, is when you get a network going and really sort of create that energy. You become just the center post and may have certain responsibilities within that, but the purpose across the network just drives so much more change. It's really amazing. I love it.
It is. That's exponential impact, right? Mm-hmm. Even those little things, like you said, you may not know that are happening, whatever they're doing to support each other, offering each other services and advice and, networks to supply chain people that maybe would give them a better product or something. It's been really powerful to be a part of the network, and you guys have done such a good job getting people to connect that way and letting them say, hey, that's what we're here for. We want you guys to reach out to each other. It's not something that you can't be apart. We're really all in it together, which we're going to kind of talk about a little bit in the next segment as well. We're going to touch on COVID-19 and sort of the pivots and the things that are happening around that, how it's actually affecting our planet, both positively and negatively, because it is. And even though the show is really about to ignite people into action around purpose, we can't ignore that that's happening right now. And how is that shifting 1%'s trajectory and all of the good that can still be done, while we're dealing with this crisis. So we are going to end part 2. And Kate Williams from 1% of the Planet, I'm so thrilled you're here. Can you please tell people how to reach you?
Absolutely. So you can check out our website at 1percentfortheplanet.org, and that's all spelled out in letters. And you'll find lots of good stuff there.
Great. Very excited. And thank you so much for tuning into part 2 of A World on Purpose. I'm Alyssa Fisher-Harris. Come back this week for part 3, because this is going to be just super heart-touching and powerful. And you'll also be able to learn how you can get involved with 1% for the Planet as well. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A World on Purpose. I'm Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and we are about to start part 3 of this 3-part series with our amazing guest, Kate Williams, CEO of 1% for the Planet organization, an incredible organization that's been around since 2002, doing real, tangible, boots-on-the-ground difference for our planet and humanity. And Kate, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited. So we touched a lot in parts 1 and 2 on your origin story, the inception of the origin story of 1% itself, how it works for a brand, and the kind of tangible impact that it's made as an organization. We are broadcasting live from our homes in the middle of a global pandemic, which obviously we thought a month ago in April that we were going to be seeing each other in person at our global summit in Los Angeles, right?
Yep.
And boy, did that change. So I want to talk a little bit about the COVID crisis and, what 1% for the Planet's response is to that crisis and how you guys are having to pivot yourselves. A lot of stuff is in person. A lot of stuff is human connection through 1%. And so I want to understand, first of all, how it's affected 1% as an organization and the brands, the NGOs involved, what you're seeing in terms of your own pivot and other brands and organizations having to pivot. Explain that a little bit, and then how you guys are responding to it.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a fascinating time, to say the least. The pivots that we have made, one is obviously our staff is working from home, and we already had about a third of our staff working remotely. So it actually that was a pretty simple transition. As it goes on, we obviously, like all, organizations that had an office are, just continuing to figure out how to do that well. But fortunately for us, that was pretty minimally disruptive. The bigger decisions for us were our two of our big initiatives this year. One was our Global Summit, which is an annual event that this would have been the 4th summit. And we have about 400 members, business members, and a few donors and individual members, but it's primarily a business member event gathering. And it's an amazing, amazing event. And we definitely had to get a little bit sad for a while about having to make a decision not to hold it. But we made the decision early, which we felt really good about. We were like, we need to do it in a way that's respectful to all of the people who would be traveling long distances. And so we made our decision actually in first week of March. So pretty early, and got some people saying, what? Why are you deciding this? And then, by the time the event would have happened in early April in LA, there's no way we could have had it. So we felt good that we had made the right decision. Just moved it to 2021. We decided we weren't going to try and shift it later, that there were enough unknowns. So we moved it to 2021. We did talk about, should we have a virtual event at the same time, things like that. We ultimately decided that we would bring forward some of the elements in different ways. Like we have our People for the Planet awards. And we decided we would, instead of announcing those on stage at Global Summit, as had been our plan, we would announce those across Earth Week and sort of use that opportunity. So that worked out really well. And then we are thinking about if there's some other kind of learning opportunities that we could spread out over the year. But for the most part, we've moved Global Summit to 2021, and we just have done a lot of sort of organic, personalized outreach to a lot of our members just to stay in touch.
What about, it was something you were going to be doing that was so awesome and unique, the Be 1% Better Global Tour. How are you guys shifting on that?
Yeah, that's our other big pivot. So that was going to be a global series of events. And so we are actually, in the next couple days, going to be launching what will now be the Be 1% Better campaign. And so it will be all digital, lots of really amazing assets, sort of focusing on all of the wonderful elements of our model, the impact that's happening on the ground, the storytelling around that, as we've talked about earlier. So, and the opportunity for people to engage. That's what we're all about, is creating impact together. So the campaign's going to be amazing. And our team has done a really great job on so many fronts of saying, all right, we started the year planning this, and now we're doing this. But we're super excited about where it's all coming together. And there have been some really powerful lessons as we've, talked to members and partners along the way, especially at a time when everyone is dealing with a, kind of upside down world. So, being able to, one of the things we've learned is it's really important for us to keep that drumbeat for the planet going. And I've started kind of signing off emails saying always for the planet, just because it feels like that's a really important role that we can play right now, is just to be a steady voice for the planet, of course, with, enormous compassion for the, public health issues that are going on right now, but also with the ability to see connections and to see learnings as we navigate this global pandemic. So, we're continuing to sort of weave a sort of always for the planet mentality into all that we're doing, even as we have to do all of that virtually.
I love that. You should definitely hashtag that. It's a great term. And on that front too, this is unfortunately not just for the planet, but for our economy. It's been so devastating. How has that impacted 1% as an organization and the members in terms of having to stick to the commitment, and being able to do it? Has it been challenging for some of the brands? How has everyone come together in that respect and are able to still be involved in some way, I hope?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And we're still learning the full extent, because it's sort of a mixed impact. Some companies are doing well and some are really struggling, and we don't know all of the stories, but a couple things that we've seen, which are, interesting. One is the number of new members we brought on in April of 2020 was higher than the number of new members we brought on in April of 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. And this was, in April of 2019, we launched a big campaign and we had our global summit. And in April of 2020, we were really, pivoting. So it's interesting to see that. And, who knows exactly what that means. But some of the things that we've heard are, I have more time. So I've been wanting to do this and I can finally get to it. Some people are saying, you know what, all of what's happening has given me a chance to reflect and realize like I have to do what matters most. And, this matters. So it's really heartening to see that. And these are companies in different sectors and of different sizes. We are also with our existing members, really trying to be flexible and responsive. So, we recognize that these are hard economic times. So if we need to adapt sort of when, renewals are paid or things like that, which, we know many businesses are doing that. So we're just, adopting those practices of being in good relationship with the people we really care about and supporting them through, because we recognize, as I said before, it's the power of the network and the power of the community. So coming through together in a strong way, really matters. One of our core values as an organization is stronger together. Mm-hmm. And so, it's really great to have this very real moment to bring that to life. And we just continue to believe that we will be stronger together. And we're clear-eyed about the fact that, we're not out of the woods yet. So there may be some economic impacts that affect our network that we see, and we'll stand strong and, be ready to welcome people back if they need it, but hopefully we can get them through.
I think that's wonderful. It's also nice to hear that when people are so fearful of letting go of their money, that they are actually starting something new. Absolutely. In a time like this. I mean, that's very inspiring, because that's sort of what I talk about in this idea of finding your purpose. Like maybe sometimes it takes a crisis for somebody. It shouldn't, unfortunately, but take a crisis for somebody to understand, wow, I need to do more. I want to do more. How can I do it? And to know that they can align and find an organization like yours that's well established, well vetted, that they know they can make a real difference, I think is great. In terms of making a difference regarding the COVID situation, it's so interesting, particularly what's happening with the planet, right? All these weird stories we see about how the impact of humans on the planet has diminished in some areas, like pollution, or the ocean animals are playing more, or the bears are coming out and having a party at Yosemite or whatever it is. But we're also using more chemicals than we were for many of us who are using a lot of green products. And not that the green products don't work, but with all the fear that's out there around these, have to use certain kinds of chemicals and more plastics again and things. How are our brands who are so dedicated to those missions of stopping single-use plastics and various things, how are they still staying the course when this is such a big change?
Yeah. And I think, our brands are once again being their amazing, innovative selves. So we have a number of different brands that are, pivoting to making masks. So, we just talked to Naturepedic, which is an amazing, natural mattress company, and they're keeping their factory operating, making organic cotton double ply masks. And so, continuing to sort of hold true to their sort of principles and values. and it's great talking to them because they have all the like insights into sort of chemicals and masks and, just some of that. So pivoting in some of those ways, a lot of that happening. I think in other ways, like just, holding steady on commitments that they've made. In other areas, like seeing new challenges and just like figuring out how to overcome them, or like, looking at their supply, giving their supply chains a second look. And I think, we're still learning. It's still early days. So I'm sure we'll hear more and more from our companies about, how they're, not only pivoting to stay economically viable, but also pivoting to address some of the, new issues and opportunities that are emerging.
And what about the nonprofits who are really doing that boots on the ground, and they're so dedicated also to, making these changes for the environment and the planet? Are they feeling frustrated or upset that, all this work, this foundation that they laid for so many years has now somehow been, again, some of it's positive for some of the organizations, but we are going to go back to at some point flying and driving cars and all these things. But how are they pivoting when it comes to waste and plastic and that kind of thing and more chemicals? Have you heard any of these stories?
Yeah. I mean, the stories I've heard are very, I don't feel like I have like the total picture yet, but, I've heard sort of specific stories. Like, for example, there has been some increase in poaching in some areas because there's not able to be sort of people on the ground to address that. And so there's some, concern about like loss of progress in areas like that, just because with the restrictions on the ability to sort of travel or support like on the ground efforts, there's some loss there. In terms of what's really heartening to see is I have been part of some conversations with nonprofit leaders looking at like, all right, so, this is rugged, but there, from the crisis comes the opportunity to recover. And how do we recover differently? And let's be part of that. And that's both businesses and nonprofits who are, part of that. I think what's hard is economically, a lot of nonprofits, are operating on really thin margins. And so, for some of them, just like survivability becomes an issue. So, it still feels like early days as to how that's all going to sort out, but we're definitely, trying to just like develop a good understanding of that and to, be as supportive as we can be.
I think that's so great. I wanted to ask you about a very exciting endeavor you guys took on in terms of storytelling and getting all these kinds of issues out on the table, and brands being able to tell their story, NGOs being able to tell their story. You guys launched your own podcast last year. You want to tell us a little bit about that and the name of it and the host and where people can find you and what it's all about?
Yeah, we love our podcast. It's called the Planet Service Announcement, the PSA. And it's been a really great effort. It's hosted by James Joyner, who's one of the most energetic people I know. He's a photographer, a storyteller, journalist, and just, really great conversationalist. And what he has done, what we have all done together is sort of create a podcast that brings in member voices, brings in change makers who are not part of our network, but who are working on issues that are of interest to our community. Different sort of, we have some celebrity personalities. We have some people who are, have devoted their life, whether they're a runner or a photographer, to, environmental issues. So I would say, the red thread through all of the podcasts is that they're, incredibly thoughtful, inspiring people who have committed in a big way to driving change for the planet. So whenever I listen to them, and of course I'm always super excited to do that, I just feel really inspired that there's so many, they kind of create this clarity that there's so many different ways that we can all be part of a different future. And so my hope for others who listen to it is that they also feel that sense of like, whatever you do, wherever you are, whatever you care most about, like you can make a difference. You can create a powerful story of change. So I think our podcast does a great job of kind of conveying that. We're psyched to continue it through, just continuing to tell those powerful stories through, a very different world than when we started it.
It's so good. I love it. In fact, the last car trip that I took was driving from Southern California to Northern California. And I I don't binge watch stuff. I binge listen. So I listened. Hadn't been able to tune into, many of the episodes, and I got to listen to that in my 7-hour drive, which was just heaven for me.
That sounds great.
It's so great. So I would love everyone to make sure that they go and tune into Planet Service Announcement and listen to these amazing, extraordinary humans, brands, NGOs that, it's really about making that tangible change, right? It's really about being able to find creative ways to make a difference. And that's what I love about how you guys do 1% for the planet. So I kind of have a question for you that isn't specifically about 1% before we go into how we can get people to learn more about you, support you, and the NGOs. You talked earlier about how you didn't think you had it all figured out, even when you had your aha moment. And certainly running a huge organization or anything that you do in life sometimes, and especially now, you're going to have stops and starts. You're going to have roadblocks. You're going to have challenges. And when people are trying to do their work and find their purpose in life, and it's difficult, what kind of advice would you give somebody who is like literally right now trying to find that part of themselves that know they want more meaning, and that they thought they figured it out, they thought they had it all, and they didn't, and they got frustrated and maybe felt like giving up? Well, have you ever felt like that in your life? And what would you tell them so that they can stay the course?
Such an important question. And I've absolutely had times like that in my life, and still do and still will, I'm sure. And I guess the two most important things that I would say are, one, try on the approach or the perspective that every challenge is actually an opportunity. I think people often get to that, but you actually can choose to, initiate thinking that way earlier on. And then you start to see things a little differently, and what you might get to learn from a situation, how you might get to change, what might actually be the opportunity. So what if you were to suddenly say there are no challenges, there are only opportunities? Like, try that on for size. The other thing is, talk to people. I've reached out to a lot of people for advice along the way, and they are, people who are older than me, that are younger than me, that are, have similar backgrounds that are different. I have always benefited from receiving that advice or input, and I've always felt welcomed. People like to be asked for advice. They want to support and help you. And so I would really encourage people to, as they're exploring the sort of boundaries of this new opportunity that they might find themselves in, to reach out to people, even if you don't know them, or, just find your way to them, or just ask. Because I think people really do. There's a lot of learning that we can do together. We are stronger together, and tapping into that when we're struggling is a really powerful opportunity.
I so agree with you. And I think there's a courageous vulnerability too, when we can admit maybe we're not feeling as confident in something. And when you're in a position like yours, a CEO, especially, people don't want to people wouldn't think that somebody would be lacking in that or doubting themselves or having to reach out to someone else to ask for advice. And to be able to have that courageous vulnerability to say, I might not have this figured out and I need to ask someone for some assistance. I personally think that there's more power in that than not. And it makes you a great leader and a great visionary.
Well, I absolutely agree that that vulnerability is key, because, the best thing about life is that we get to keep learning. And if you shut yourself off from that because you think that people expect you to know everything, you're missing out. And so I think staying open to learning, which means staying a little uncomfortable sometimes and being vulnerable, is really, I think, such an important thing. And it creates the space for other people to learn and grow with you, which is always fun.
Definitely. Oh, so much of a heart statement of what you just shared. Thank you so much for doing that, because I think that's really what people need to hear, especially right now. So what I want to know is, one more question I had before we go kind of into how people can get involved. Well, sort of is, I guess, aligned with this. 1% is growing. The network is growing. You're in specific industries. Before we find out how people can get involved with you, because it's sort of a call to action, are there specific industries and sectors and areas you're trying and hoping that can jump on board with 1%? that maybe haven't gotten involved with that pledge yet. And then we'll talk about how others can get involved.
Yeah. I mean, we want everyone. I would say, we don't have like a car company at this point. And we think that, while we don't want people to, while we all need to reduce our driving, and we are right now, we think that, having that industry represented would be great. We'd love to have similarly airlines. Really, the more breadth of representation that we could have. So some of those types of industries would be newer to us. So if you are sitting out there listening and have a role to play, but really more than sort of thinking of those specific sectors, your whatever seat you're in, we'd love to have you think about how you might be involved. And if you'd like, Alyssa, I can pivot off of that to talk about some of the different ways people can get involved.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Because I think it's one thing that I realize I haven't said much about is we do have an individual member program. So if you're a business owner, if you work in a business, joining as a member is certainly an opportunity. And as of just a couple of years ago, we also have an individual member program. So if you are a person, maybe you're working in a business, maybe not, but you want to make a 1% commitment, we have a way that you can do that. And it's different than business membership in that it's not a 1% of sales type of thing. So we can give you more information about that. But our core belief is that everyone has a 1%, and we want you to be part of this community with us. So we'd love to invite individuals also to explore that. And then also all of us buy groceries. All of us, go out and, we may be buying less right now, but we are, people who make purchases. And so we have the opportunity to choose with our dollars, what we support. And we really encourage you to look for that 1% for the Planet logo and to buy from brands that have a purpose and that are genuinely making a commitment to driving change, because business is very powerful, and businesses that are giving back, businesses that are changing their practices, they are making a big difference, and they are doing that regardless of what might be going on at a government level. So we encourage you to think about your purchases as well.
That's great. And it's not just products, right? It's services.
Exactly.
So advertising agencies, CPAs, accounting firms,
Great
film
point.
companies. I think it's important for people to think about, if you're buying a service, how can you still support the planet, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, more and more. We have more and more services joining, which is great.
That's great. Well, I am just, Kate, thank you so much. We were supposed to do this in person here in LA. So this is the next best thing, to be able to see your beautiful face live from Vermont. And you're just awesome, beyond.
You too. Thank you so much. Such a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
You too. And I look forward to seeing what kind of stuff 1% is going to continue to do through this crisis. And I'll be tuning into all your virtual stuff. And for anyone who wants to find, let's tell them where they can find you.
Absolutely. So it's 1%fortheplanet.org, and that's all spelled out in letters. And I'll maybe just, as my sign off, just reiterate that, what we're focused on right now is remaining always for the planet.
I love it. Hashtag always for the planet.
Absolutely.
I wish I had a bumper sticker, although I wouldn't want anything out of paper. So now I have to figure that out. Anyway, that is so, so great. Thank you so much, Kate. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning into World on Purpose. I look forward to seeing you again when we interview our next amazing guest who is living their life on purpose. I'm Melissa Fisher-Harris. Enjoy your day.
Thank you for taking this journey into a world on purpose with our incredible guests. To learn more about our amazing guests and their inspiring purpose-driven work, please go to aworldonpurpose.com. Don't forget to look at our call to action of the week to mobilize your desire for purpose into action. A World on Purpose can be found on Apple Podcasts and all the major podcast platforms, and the video version can be found on YouTube. If what you heard today inspires you, please write a review and like and share on the platform of your choice. We'd love to also hear from you and learn your pivot to purpose and the meaningful work that you do that lifts humanity. Send your stories to info@aworldonpurpose.com. I'd like to thank our World on Purpose team for making this show a reality. Once again, I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris. Thank you for tuning into A World on Purpose. I look forward to seeing you soon.